Greg Ehrenberg here with Adam Scherer. We got another edition of the NBA Injury Report, new week, and a fairly substantially sized Monday slate. And as usual, lots of NBA injuries to hit do us favor. Like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave us a comment, any questions you have about any of the stuff we talk about. Anybody gets added or taken off the injury report later in the day, leave a question below in the comment section. I'll be circling back to answer those later in the day. Without further ado, let's get into this, starting with the Milwaukee Bucks. Jrue Holiday is out. He was in the health and safety protocol. He's back from that, but now he has an ankle injury. We've seen a couple games with him now. We've also seen games in the past where the Bucks didn't have Jrue Holiday. How does his absence affect DFS tonight?
So one huge difference is that Giannis averages several minutes more per game in the games that he plays without Jrue than with him. It makes sense just because obviously you're missing a rotation piece. You need ball handling, and Giannis can do that. But also, games are just more likely to be competitive. The Bucks are better when Holiday is active. They're more likely to blow out their opponent. So you can add a couple minutes onto Giannis's projection in a fantastic spot tonight. Also, if Jordan Nwora is in the starting lineup, that probably depends on Connaughton. But if Nwora is in the starting lineup, he still looks like a reasonable value. Should play around 30 minutes or so. Middleton ceiling probably is a little bit higher without Holiday. His average production doesn't change too much, but it is one less guy for him to compete with for touches. So I think the big impact is that you can expect more playing time for Giannis, who's the second best fantasy point producer in the league. So that's a pretty big deal, but there's a trickle down effect to others as well.
So big news. We just got some injury news that broke while we were doing this. It's not like crazy big news, but it's going to be somewhat substantial. Seth Curry is questionable for today. And so I just kind of mixed up the order of that stuff written down here on my sheet of injuries to talk about. We already had for the Philadelphia 76ers, we have Maxey is out, Shake Milton's out, both of them in the health and safety protocols. We've seen Curry play massive minutes as of late. Now that he's questionable, if he's out, how are the Sixers going to handle these backcourt minutes?
Yeah, it's going to be weird because they'll be down essentially 3 point guards. One thing you have seen this year without Maxey or Milton on the floor is that not only has Curry seen an uptick in assist percentage, but so have Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris. I think this could be a situation where, even if those guys aren't going to get more minutes necessarily, that you just see the ball in their hands more. We've seen Embiid take on a better, be a better passer this year anyway. We know Harris can play that role as well. So it could be a situation where you see minutes, going to sort of some end of the bench guys. Maybe, Tyler Johnson gets some more run, something like that. But I think you could just see more fantasy production for guys like Embiid and Harris.
Yeah, and it's also a very easy matchup for them against the Houston Rockets. So that was fresh news that happened just as we were doing the show. So keep an eye for what happens to the Philadelphia 76ers. Potential for a massive amount of value in the backcourt there.
I misspoke on Tyler Johnson, by the way. He's on the Spurs now.
But what was that?
I said I misspoke on Tyler Johnson. He's on the Spurs now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and we're going to be hitting on the Spurs later as well because they're also dealing with some issues of their own. But right now, the Utah Jazz, they've got Gay is out, Hughes is out, Ingles is out, Butler's out, Gobert is out. Now, we've seen a massive amount of ownership go to Hassan Whiteside in the last couple of slates for good reason. He's been way too cheap, particularly on DraftKings. There's no Gobert. He's an excellent points per minute fantasy producer. I have no clue how Whiteside ended up failing in both of those spots. Now, he still ended up being in first place lineups and tournaments because he was so popular, was cheap enough that it didn't really kill us. Are you going back to Whiteside today? And who else makes sense from the Jazz?
Yeah, I think going back to Whiteside makes a lot of sense. The only real argument I could make against Whiteside is for ownership reasons. There's, as usual, a ton of really good center options on the slate, but I really don't think we should be reading too much into Whiteside being disappointing in his couple of starts. He's not the type of player that is, a 30% usage guy off the bench and then he moves into the starting lineup and becomes worse. He's played 400 minutes with Donovan Mitchell on the floor this year, and he's still averaged 1.19 DraftKings points per minute. I think that he's still going to be popular, but I think there's also just going to be some recency bias where, for one reason or another, people decide that the most recent 55 minutes are more important than the entire sample of work we've gotten from Whiteside, both this year and in the past. We know what this guy is. And I think that there is reason for optimism from the last couple of games because he played 30 minutes and then 26 minutes. So the playing time has been there. So he still looks very good. The rest of the team, I think you still get around 28 to 30 minutes from Jordan Clarkson. Bogdanovich should play a lot. O'Neal should play a lot. Conley and Mitchell both look fine. So I think it's kind of the same thing as we normally get with Utah, where there's a lot of pieces that look pretty good. Whiteside really stands out, though, in terms of value.
And I do wonder if there's going to be somewhat of a downtick in his ownership just because everybody's sick of this guy. I know from doing live before lock, people are like, Whiteside again. Like people are just cringing at the at the name of Whiteside, I would not be surprised if recency bias does drive his ownership down a little bit compared to what it's actually projected. I think people are tired of rostering this guy, especially when he was like 90% owned last slate. Moving on, we have the Indiana Pacers. Karis LeVert is out. Malcolm Brogdon is questionable. Torrey Craig is questionable. Now, we've seen some massive games from Lance Stevenson as of late where there was no LeVert, there was no Brogdon. If Brogdon's back, I think it kind of takes all of these value guys out of consideration for the Pacers. So first, do you agree with that? And then if he is out, though, which of the Pacers guys do you want to get to, if any of them?
Yeah, if he's back, it makes it really difficult to get to anything here. But if he's out, I think there is still some value, although it is becoming riskier because of the emergence of Lance Stevenson. When Stevenson was just, an end of the bench guy, you could pretty safely say, okay, Kiefer Sykes is going to play 35 minutes and Dwayne Washington's going to play 35 minutes. Now you have Lance Stevenson going out there playing well, closing halves, closing the game. He played 28 minutes last time out. So he definitely cuts into not only their production, but their playing time as well. So they would still look like good values. Sykes at 4,600, Washington at 4,800, but they do become riskier because not only are the prices increasing a bit, but you do now have Stevenson, you have Duarte back, you have just more bodies that can take minutes away potentially.
And Lance now priced up to $5,500 on DraftKings, $6,600 on FanDuel, just because he's been somebody who's gotten a lot of attention on social media. Do you think he's somebody that you'd be looking to go to if Brogdon is out?
As long as he's really low owned, if you're playing, a lot of tournament lineups, particularly on DraftKings where he's 5,500 instead of I think it's 6,600 on FanDuel, you can, because like if he plays well, he can get 26 to 28 minutes. He gets plenty of opportunities with the second unit. You shouldn't be very comfortable with it though, because like last game, for example, he closed over Miles Turner. There's going to be a lot of games Miles Turner closes and Stevenson could just be on the bench. He also could close over any of Justin Holiday, Sykes, Washington. Like if he's playing well, the minutes are there. But if he's not playing well, he doesn't have to be in the closing lineup at all.
Our NBA injury report is sponsored by Yahoo. If you guys are unfamiliar or new to Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, sign up for the first time using the link in the description box below. You head on over to Yahoo, make a deposit, enter a contest, and you get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. You find all the tools that we have over at Awesemo to make money playing any DFS sport on pretty much any platform. So check us out, support us, and it's a great offer. Take advantage of signing up at Yahoo for the first time. Stop guessing, start winning, join Awesemo Plus today. All right, moving on with some of the other injury news. We briefly talked about the San Antonio Spurs before and how Tyler Johnson is one of the guys on them on a 10-day contract. They have a bunch of guys out today. Vassell is out. White is out. Trey Jones is out. Thad Young is out. We've got Doug McDermott listed as questionable. I'm not sure there's any one individual Spurs guy that is all of a sudden like, oh, this guy benefits like crazy. But there is a lot of minutes and usage that need to be allocated. So which are the guys that become more favorable in this situation?
Yeah, if McDermott's out, or if as long as they're starting, I guess Lonnie Walker and Josh Primo are the two that stand out to me. Walker's been around a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy this year. He played yesterday, excluding overtime. He played like 28 minutes, but he also didn't close the first half. So you had Tyler Johnson, which is why he was on my mind from earlier. He actually played the final 4 minutes of the first half. You could easily get a situation where Walker gets those minutes as well, gets up to 32. But even if he plays like 28 minutes, he's going to look like a pretty good value. And then Josh Primo dealt with some foul trouble a couple of games ago. Last game played 34.5 in regulation. He's been about a 0.78 fantasy point per minute guy this year. He's someone where, when you move him into the starting lineup, you would expect the production to drop. But at the same time, this is a skeleton squad starting lineup for the Spurs, with the exception of Murray, and Pirtle. It's not like he's going into a lineup full of high usage guys. So I still expect around 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute from Primo at close to minimum salary, playing probably 30 plus minutes.
Yep, I think that all makes sense. And Spurs guys, it does look like Lonnie Walker is going to be very, very popular today. Really hard player to nail down. There's a lot of variance there, but I do think that he's the value player that would make the most sense. And then Primo potentially as a pivot off him, because he does appear to be like he's going to be lesser owned for this slate. Next injury situation, the New York Knicks. We've got Evan Fournier, Kemba Walker, Nerlens Noel, all questionable. To me, the biggest talking point here is Kemba Walker. If he plays, what do you expect his potential upside to be, or just his overall viability as a DFS option? Because his role has been so weird this year. He played so poorly at the beginning of it. He fell out of the Knicks rotation altogether. Then he gets reinserted back in the rotation, and all of a sudden he becomes the chalkiest play in all of DFS, and he's crushing every night. Then he gets hurt again. If he's back in the mix, how are you going to view him as a tournament option?
A lot is going to depend on if he's starting or not, because I think that's going to be a really good signal into how many minutes we can expect him to play. If you remember before, like Kemba came back from that prolonged absence and moved into the starting lineup, and it was kind of just like, all right, what do we do with that? Is he going to be a Tibbs starter and Tibbs is going to play him a ton of minutes, or is this just like an Evan Fournier type thing where he's going to play, like, he's not going to close the game, he's going to play 28 minutes, and he just came in and played massive minutes right out of the gate. If they move him back into the starting lineup here, I'm not saying that I expect 38 to 40 minutes, but I think it's a signal that as long as he's playing well and doesn't get re-injured, that he's going to give you 32 or more, and he would look reasonable at 6,500. If he comes off the bench, I'm pretty comfortable ignoring him at that price point. Coming off the bench doesn't necessarily mean that he's not still getting 26 to 28 minutes, but it would make me think it's a lot more likely that he ends up being limited to some extent.
Yeah, something else just to add in about Kemba Walker, even at a 5,200 price tag on FanDuel, he's not really picking up ownership today. If he starts at 5,200, that's pretty interesting to me. But like you said, we need an update. We don't even know if he's playing. If he's playing, we don't know if he's starting. Some more information we need later in the day. Check out the deeper dive, live before lock, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you guys will get updated information on Adam and I later in the day when we do have it at our disposal. A couple more key injuries to hit on for tonight's slate. Here, first with the Portland Trailblazers. Norman Powell, Larry Nance, CJ McCollum, Damian Lillard are now all out. Damian Lillard is going to be out for at least the next 8 games. My gut feeling is he doesn't return this season. He got hurt in the Olympics in July. So we had Damian Lillard basically sat out August, September, returns to play basketball at the end of October. The injury never gets better. And now they think like, hey, let's hold him out for 8 games and see what happens. If those 3 months didn't heal him, I don't think these next 8 games are going to, but that's beside the point. We have all these guys out for the Blazers, and first Dame's out, you figure McCollum's going to pick up extra usage, and Dame and McCollum are out, you figure Powell's going to pick up all the usage. Now he's out also. Where does the usage go?
Yeah, so one thing that's been really different this year is Anthony Simons has always been someone that steps up when McCollum and or Lillard are out. But normally you're talking about like a 22, 23% usage guy. This year in 228 minutes without McCollum or Lillard on the floor, Simons has a 28.6% usage rate. That's actually the highest on the team with the exception of Norman Powell, who's at 29.3%. I think it's likely you see even more usage go to Simons with Powell out. Next, you also have Jusuf Nurkic, who has a 27.7% usage rate without those guys on the floor. He played 38.5 minutes yesterday. I think you continue to see increased playing time and increased usage and production for him. Those are the two that I expect to really take on usage. Then you're going to get, Ben McLemore started yesterday. He dealt with some foul trouble, probably plays 30 plus minutes tonight as long as he avoids fouls. He's not a high usage guy, but he'll go out there and knock down some shots. He's around a 20%er. Nas Little should be around 19%. Covington will be the lowest usage guy most likely. But all of those guys are going to look like reasonable plays. As far as scoring, though, I expect Simons and Nurkic to lead the way.
Yeah, and I think they kind of are forced to play Nurkic bigger minutes now. I know Billups has been pretty hesitant to do it earlier in the year where we just saw a lot of games where it was like 22 minutes for Nurkic, 24 minutes. Sometimes he wasn't closing. We've seen bigger minutes as of late, the 39, 31, 33 in the last 3 games. And I think a lot of that is buoyed just by these guys being out for the Blazers, and they need another guy to run the offense through. Do you think this recent run of minutes we've seen from Nurkic is what we could expect from him going forward?
Yeah, because I think that it makes sense for a couple of reasons. For one, early in the season, I mean, it kind of just makes sense to try and, not run Nurkic into the ground all year anyway. But also you had Cody Zeller backing him up. We know that's, a competent backup. Zeller is back now, but he's just returning. But then when you have Lillard healthy, when you have McCollum healthy, as good as Nurkic is, he's the third scoring option in the offense. You don't really need him out there to score, at least for the minutes that both of those guys are on the floor. Now you take them out, and like you said, you need someone else to run the offense through. Then you also don't have Larry Nance now. So whereas before you could potentially run some smaller lineups where I know there was a stretch where like Nance had kind of replaced Zeller as the backup. You could run, those lineups where Larry Nance is getting more minutes. But when he's out, you need Covington to soak up those minutes at the 4. You basically just need to play a bigger lineup 1 through 4. It's harder to go small. You have Powell out, so you're losing that wing. It essentially comes down to, with the personnel they have right now, not only do you need Nurkic to carry the load offensively, but you kind of need to play a center because you're short bodies on the wings and in the backcourt. Like if you tried to run a small lineup here, it just means that you're playing CJ Ellaby over Jusuf Nurkic, and why the hell would you be doing that? So it's really tough to think that he's not getting sizable minutes going forward.
Yeah, certainly a center play that I like quite a bit for his upside today. Now, the final piece of injury news, Darius Garland is questionable. And we already know Ricky Rubio's out for the season. Colin Sexton's out for the season. Isaac Okoro's out for an extended period of time. They signed Rajon Rondo recently. Could we see him start and play big minutes if Garland is out, or is it somebody else you think would make sense as a value option?
I think it would be Rondo. I mean, you could get Pangos, you could get Goodwin, but Rondo was in the rotation last game. He played 17 minutes in a game that Garland played 39. So you actually got a little bit of playing time where they were alongside each other. To me, that suggests that, Rondo is what he is at this point in his career, but the Cavs, I think he's, their best guy outside of Garland. So I'd expect him to move into the starting lineup if Garland is out.
Yeah, $3,300 on DraftKings. And I think something that people kind of have to understand with some of the stuff is I don't like Rondo. I've talked about this on shows. I've talked about it on social media. A lot of people disagree with me. I don't think he's a good real life player. It doesn't matter for DFS. He's somebody who, if he starts, probably becomes one of the best value options on the slate. $4,100 on FanDuel, $3,300 on DK. And due to where this game is, with it being a later start time, I don't know he's going to pick up all that much ownership. So if he starts, I think Rondo's just unavoidable on this slate. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. And it's so one nice thing here is that even though this is the last game of the night, on DraftKings, Rondo's 3,300, Ben McLemore is 3,300. They don't play the same position, but it's the two late games, so there's a good chance you're just gonna have a lot of like utility spot or guard spot on those guys. I think McLemore is a very good play, but if we get news that like let's say 8:30 Eastern that Darius Garland is out, you can either just late swap and get to McLemore and Rondo, but even if you just like took all of your Ben McLemore and made it Rajon Rondo, Rondo is by basically for sure 100% going to be lower owned in that situation than he would be if we got that news right now. And so he's just kind of by definition going to be under owned. So it's a situation where like at the very least you can just say, okay, well, Rondo's going to be lower owned than he should be. Everyone is making their lineups knowing what McLemore's role is. So even that in and of itself is a very good late swap, I think.
Yeah, a lot of moving pieces today. Do us a favor, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, because you're going to want to check out what all the news is later in the day. We're going to have it covered on Deeper Dive, Live Before Lock. Check all that out. And anything happens, leave us a comment below, ask a question. I'll be sure to answer it. Good luck today, guys.